Welcome to the Embodied Dialogues podcast. I'm your host, Jan Winhall, creator of the Felt Sense Polyvagal Model and the FSPM Institute. Here in this experiential space, we explore intersections of trauma healing, addiction recovery, and nervous system science, helping us embody the theories that we are creating, sharing, and challenging. Thank you for listening. Join our live audience at janwinhall.com. Hello, everybody. So I'm here today with Holly Lowery, and we're going to share how to build a somatic toolkit. So many people signed up for this, really lots of interest in this. So let's begin by just pausing a little bit and sensing into just the space that you're in. All bodies are welcomed here. Here comes everybody. And just slowing down a little bit so that we can have a nice pause in our day, wherever you are in the world. And just notice, does it feel right for you to just kind of focus on something in the room around you? And if it feels okay and like your body's ready to kind of close your eyes and drop down into the center, that feels fine too. Just check and see, how close do I want to be or feels right for me to my inside self? I'm checking to see, how am I doing in here as I slow down? This is a really body-friendly place. Yeah. So different than the way we normally have to contain ourselves in the world these days. So really taking just a time to slow down and be with our bodies in whatever way feels right for you in this moment. And we're going to spend some beautiful time with Holly, being with our body, all of its complexity and its simplicity. Yeah. And just letting your body yawn and stretch if it wants to. You can stand up, take up some space if you want to. Really just allowing our whole body to feel welcomed in this space. Welcomed, respected. Yeah, beautiful. So also a hello to all of our friends that will watch the recording, because there were so many people, hundreds of people signed up to see this, which is pretty cool. So I'm here today with Holly. We're going to spotlight first for a while, and then we'll come back to you guys. Hello.
Hello, Jan. Hello, everybody.
So Holly, are you in New York?
I am. I'm in upstate New York in Syracuse.
Wow.
Yeah. So not too far.
No, I'm in Toronto. So yeah, we have a kind of a similar fall chill coming in. We were talking about our wood stoves and our furnaces and whatever before we started. Yeah.
It's time to fire them up.
Fire them up. Yeah. So you and I met, I think, was I in a podcast of yours, or you were in I was.
Yes, I invited you on my podcast, but I had heard you speak in one of Marika's workshops she hosted, I think, last year. So that's how I discovered you and your incredible.
Oh, through my daughter, Marika Heinrichs. Yeah. Yeah. She's doing great work. I'm so proud of her.
Mhm.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about What do you want us to know about kind of what you're up to these days as we just start to dig into the
Sure.
whole world of somatics? Yeah.
I know. I have a part of me that's like, oh, there's so much to talk about today, but we'll get to what we get to. Sure, a little bit about myself. I'm a body-oriented coach and somatic practitioner. I primarily work with folks one-on-one in private practice. And in that container, we do a lot of focusing. I
Mm-hmm.
also tend to bring in some parts work as
Mm-hmm.
needed, sort of interweave. I think there's such a natural overlap between focusing and parts work.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of experimentation. And really in that work, my aim is to help people find more stability, feel really assured and sort of like trusting in their ability to resource themselves.
Mm.
And also to cultivate a stronger sense of self, or that like sort of deep center place inside that we can come back to.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about the ways in which we soothe ourselves.
Mhm.
And I do a lot of work in trauma and addiction. So, and the ways that help us in the short term, but, get in the way in the long term.
Yep.
And then the resourcing ways that really nourish that ventral vagus over time. So, and yeah, I mean, it really is about developing that sense of self, right? That
Yeah.
there's somebody in there you can go to.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody in there you can go to, and who also can bring nourishment, care, support, and sometimes like corrective repair to the parts of us inside that are holding pain or fear, or
Yeah.
really scared or uncomfortable, or whatever sort of going on for those parts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is the core of healing, really,
Hmm.
when you have that in there. And we've also, one of the things I don't forget about the conversation that I had with you that I think is so important is the way in which finding that, cultivating that part of you, that self in there, as a IFS would say, right, is not a part, but whatever,
Yeah.
that
We
place,
won't get lost in the
whatever
language
that
today.
place in there, uh, that we can find these toolkits and these techniques and whatever, and they're all really helpful. But the process of being with all of that is really so central that it's not
Mhm.
just, it's like what Gendlin would talk about, that you can make felt sensing and focusing into these 6 steps to find it. It can become a method,
Mhm.
but the process itself is just the way bodies work.
Right.
And that's what people don't get, right?
Yeah. Well, because our thinking minds, or our analytical parts want, and because we live in a culture that really dominates that way,
Yeah.
right, with this analysis and sort of top down, we have been sort of trained, I guess, for lack of better words, to reach for the framework, the tools, the methodology,
Yeah.
so we can maybe feel productive in the work we're doing with ourselves. But really the process, uh, and I even feel like maybe we should tease that word out a little bit, because even that feels kind of like the process could be, methodology, but that deep slowing down and really, or letting organicity have a place and a role, and letting the system sort of spontaneously speak to us, like that's where real shifts occur, the felt shift
Yeah.
occurs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Letting those those systems speak to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, I think the tools, the resources
Mhm.
have a place, um, in that sometimes our system needs support from the outside when there's not enough safety in, to
Yeah.
really slow down. So I don't know if you want to go there yet, but just to kind of plug that.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally, and especially if we don't have much of what's in there, right? You're saying
Mhm.
we need these ways that we can grasp onto
Yeah.
to help us. Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes those ways become a bit reductionistic. So we want to honor them, but also, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think about, and I explain it to my clients this way too. I think, whether we call it nervous system work or, you know, resourcing ourselves, like I think about that as like the entry, like that's just opening the door to the inside, but we still have to actually step through the door. Right. We still, well, we don't have to, but but the deeper work kind of lies beyond the threshold, you know. And so, yeah, I think about taking care of our needs, our nervous system needs, our safety needs through resourcing, as a way to open the door to the inside. But there's still so much more that awaits beyond that, right? So it's like, okay, let's bring in some support to the system and help our, through an IFS lens, help our parts, but right through Gendlin's lens, help our being feel a bit more settled so that we can really turn inward. Um,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, and Jen would say so that we can move beyond step one of clearing space and come into the beginnings of some safety there in the body, and then also bringing in whatever is so uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I mean, Judith Herman said this 45 years ago, and she said, "Wait a minute, we're not resourcing people enough." She talked about those 3 stages of healing that I use still all the time, right? Establishing safety is first,
Yeah.
then
Mhm.
remembering and mourning, and then reconnecting. And of course, they blur, but we do our best to help people with that resourcing in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, can you share a little bit? And it would be great if you did a few of those practices with us so we can get a
Sure.
sense of what that feels like in our
Yeah,
bodies.
yeah. Well, I think of resourcing. I love a handy little acronym. It's called PEMSR, which is not a word that's easy to remember, but we're going to talk through it, and hopefully it'll be easy to remember by the time we finish.
Okay.
But really, before we get to that, what I want folks to think about when it comes to resourcing is doability, right? Like, how do we keep our resourcing, our tools, our self care doable? Because, especially as it relates to coming out of dorsal vagal state, or helping our system maybe complete a more mobilizing response, um, we have to remember, like, we're in a threat response when we're in those states, and we don't have as much access to our creative thinking, our prefrontal cortex. And so let's keep it doable, right? And when I think of resourcing, I think of stabilizing. Right.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes this is a paradox because, the reality is stability, some could call stability a construct, right? Nothing is really predictable. Nothing is ever stable. Everything's always changing. It's the nature of life. It's the nature of existence is change. But we as mammals are hardwired to want to feel for stability, to want to feel safe, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
it's okay to meet that need. And I think of resourcing as a way to bring in a deeper sense of stability and safety. I think sometimes when we use the word safety, even that becomes a little ambiguous. And so
Hmm.
maybe stability feels like another way to kind of
Hmm.
orient to the idea of bringing safety to ourselves. Um, so that being said, PEMSR. PEMSR stands for physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, and relational. Um, and I'll go through these again, or maybe we could put them in the chat, Lisa, if that's okay. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, relational. Okay. And this is a way to think about the different aspects of our needs, right? I have physical needs, I have emotional needs, etc. But it's also a way to think about the different types of resources we can plug into,
Hmm.
right? So I start with physical because oftentimes when we're dealing with a threat response, We need to help our physical body, our physical being feel safe, right? And a great way to do that is to first come into contact with the body, right? To even feel, oh, I have a body. It's not just me with my little floating head and all my swirling, looping thoughts, right? And so one tool that I love to use for this, it's really simple, and this practice comes from Jane Clapp, if you're
Oh,
familiar with
yeah.
her work
Yeah.
in Jungian's
Yeah.
method.
Yeah.
She calls it the 4-quadrant wake up, and we're going to use, the arms, the legs. Sometimes I like to add in the torso, but that really unmaths the maths on quadrant. But anyways, we're just going to take one arm, doesn't matter which, and we're going to just bring some contact to that arm with the other hand, right? So that could be tapping, that could be rubbing, it could be squeezing, scratching. And the aim here is to really feel that contact from one hand to the arm, right? And to notice what kind of contact feels best for me. What actually feels good? Can I feel it at all? Right? Because sometimes when we're really disembodied, even just that, can I feel it is pretty profound.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another layer you could add to this is saying out loud, this is my arm, and really looking at your arm. And I know that kind of sounds silly, right? But again, when we are feeling maybe collapsed,
Yeah.
we feel like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's real. A simple statement like, this is my arm, this is my leg, this is
Yeah.
me, that can be
Or
really
in the middle of panic.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. In both
Yeah.
of those really dysregulated places.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So, and you guys can keep going. I encourage you to. So you would just shift from one arm to the other, ideally with a pause in between to notice
Mm.
what's different here from the arm I just contacted to the other side.
Mhm. Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. And so, and I should have mentioned this when we were on earlier, Jan. I have a worksheet I can share and we can link to in the show notes that recaps all of the tools and things for PEMSR too. So folks don't
Great.
like write all this down, but
Excellent.
yeah. So yeah, I think about physical resources first. And sometimes I tell my clients, I'm like, I want you to think about yourself as a plant or a baby. Not to infantilize yourself when you're struggling, but to think about the really basic core needs a baby would have.
Mhm.
Baby needs a loving, co-regulatory body. A baby needs to be swaddled, right? Our system, wrap yourself in a burrito, I have my
Mhm.
hot water bottle right here, right? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just hot and weight on the chest, right? Where
Mhm.
our vagus nerve runs over the chest. Again, coming back to the baby here, baby loves to be warm, baby loves to be swaddled, baby loves to have eye contact and soothing voice, and to go on walk in its stroller and look up at the trees, and to be fed, to be hydrated, to be clothed, to be right. So we can start to think of our own needs in the same way when we're really in a state of panic or a state of
Yeah.
shutdown. um, how can I make sure my most basic needs are met? Um, and so yeah, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds there, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts or things to
Well,
add.
it's just interesting because Gendlin used to say things like, we are at least plants.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. And he would use that analogy of the sunflower, that if a sunflower was in a shaded area, you could see how the sunflower would twist around and move towards the sun. And that
Mhm.
that is what bodies do, because bodies know the right next step
Yeah.
if you give them what they need, he would say.
Yeah.
And this is just wisdom. It's
Yeah.
just how bodies work, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
really love that metaphor because one I've heard that's similar but different, and I'm just going to share this because it's hilarious, but also fits is that we're often like a potato in the root cellar, where like we're going to have one little sprout that's reaching for that speck of light
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
through,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that can be really reassuring when we feel lost in the
Mhm.
dark.
Yeah, and it so goes together with Steve Porges' ventral vagal definition of health, growth, and restoration.
Yeah.
That in the state where we feel that stability and predictability, enough predictability to feel safe enough, that the body is designed to carry forward into health and growth and
Yes.
restoration. That's how we're wired.
Yeah.
And we lose all of that awareness in this, really depersonalized kind of world culture that we live in, right?
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
bringing that back. We're really trying to bring this back home and into a very white dominated culture that has lost the roots.
Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
cultures haven't lost it, but we sure have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that, there's so much to say there, but even just
Yeah.
the rugged individualism that we suffer from, this idea.
Hypermasculinity.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's killing us.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think about even the power of focusing. We were talking about having a focusing buddy before we got on the call, and just that co-regulation and the safety of being seen by someone else uh,
Yes.
is
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. We have a new course starting November 19th, and um, everybody will have a focusing partner. So you'll be working through, it's like working through these ideas down in our bodies, right? Yeah. So you just did that. You had this idea, and then we start to take it into the body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So can you give us maybe another example of something where a client might be struggling? And what would be in that toolbox?
Yeah, yeah, great. So, again, I'm still stuck at physical here. I promise we'll get to the others, but I emphasize physical most because I think it has the biggest impact on bringing safety to the body, right? Um, One of the tools I really feel is kind of a go-to,
Hmm.
anything that has to do with balancing or involving your proprioceptive and kinesthetic systems.
Yeah.
So even I don't have my ball with me. My cat likes to bat it around my room, but um let's say I have my ball on here, right? A really simple practice of trying to balance the ball on a book. And it's harder than you think, right? And you might think, how is this helping me feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
Here's how. Because when your brain has to focus on something so in the here and now, it
Yeah.
helps the rest of the body get here and now and realize through neuroception, oh, wait, right here, right now, maybe there is enough safety and stability for me to come back to myself.
Mhm.
Right. But you don't need a ball or a book. You can practice. I'm going to stand and do a little demo. Um,
Mhm.
you can practice just on one foot, right? And
Mhm.
so leaning as far as you can in one direction until you feel like you're going to tip over, and then slowly, gently bringing it back to center, finding center, maybe feeling into your feet,
Mhm.
and then doing so on the other side, right? And just sort of titrating that way back and forth. Again, to sort of help the mind. It's not to help the mind slow down. It's actually to help uh, the nervous system be as present as possible with the what's happening at hand. And when we are sort of tasked with that type of presencing, our system responds, right? And can sort of downshift, if you will, or upshift if we're a little
Mhm.
shut down.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, so I'm looking at my little reference here if there's anything else in physical. I mean, there's a lot here, and as I said, I'll send a resource sheet through to you guys. But I think about really those basic needs I mentioned, baby plant needs, and compression on the chest, ice or heat on the face, really, right? Because there's so many nerves from the back of the occipital bone, down the spine, over the front of the chest, up into the face, even just some light touch, right?
Mhm.
Can be
Mhm.
really, really supportive to slow down with
Well,
our.
and this is this whole area of the ventral vagus, right?
Yeah.
up above the diaphragm and then up and through the ear and across the face. Yeah.
Yeah. And so even when you're at work and maybe you're like, I can't step away, I'm so stressed, right? Even just being on a meeting like this, you just look
Mhm.
like you're thinking really hard, but really you're bringing some support to your system.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that,
Mhm.
yeah, moving into the emotional,
Mhm.
again, and there's going to be overlap between these different aspects of our experience, but co-regulating, phoning a friend, leaning into your partner, asking for a hug, um, and internally bringing compassion to ourselves.
Mhm.
If that's possible, if there's enough safety to come inside,
Yeah.
noticing what is happening inside, and can I bring love, compassion, or at least neutrality to whatever's in there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mental resources. I think it's really interesting. And Jan, I'd love your thoughts on this. I think sometimes in the world of somatic work and healing and mindfulness, we get this idea that the mind is bad, and that we shouldn't be
Mm.
thinking or we shouldn't be feeding the mind. And really, first of all, that the separation between mind and body is construct in the first place. But I really and I have come to believe in my own personal experience and with clients that the mind is a part of us, right? And it actually has its own wisdom to offer, and it has its own needs, right? And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah,
God, where would we be without our mind
right, yeah.
and our brain and our body?
We need it all. We need it
We
all.
need it all. Yeah. It's all part of one body.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and so I think about, I mean, just yesterday I was on a walk, and usually I like to unplug on my walk, just kind of be listening to what's around me, but my mind felt a little like it just needed it needed a story. So I started listening to an audiobook, a fiction audiobook, right? And
Mm.
I just had this wave of joy wash over me, which maybe this sounds corny, that's fine if it does, but this wave of joy of like,
Oh,
oh, my mind was asking for food and it wanted
yeah.
story as food, and I fed it, and that's cool. Like I get to
Mm.
trust myself that that need is okay. It's not something wrong. I'm not distracting myself, right? Because as I develop a relationship inside, I can discern if I'm distracting myself or if I'm meeting a need in there. And
Mhm.
also sometimes distraction is a need, and right? So
Yeah,
keep on.
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I think you're raising an important point and one that Steve, Porges talks about, that we can have these portals into being able to resource, and
Mhm.
sometimes they're from top down.
Right.
So
Yeah.
absolutely, we can, through cognition, we can be able to rewire the nervous system by reminding ourselves, wait a minute, this is not that. This
Mhm.
is, today, it's not 5 years ago when that happened and I'm being triggered in the moment. And
Yes.
so the model that we use through the polyvagal course is definitely top down, bottom up.
Yeah.
It's both because the mind is in the body. And
Yeah.
even with focusing, people will say, oh, is it okay to, like, I went up to thinking about it. And we're like, that's fine. You can use thoughts as part of that process and then bring the thoughts back down into the body.
Yeah.
So bring the ideas, the concepts, like neuroception is a concept.
Mhm.
But what would be a whole kind of felt sense of neuroception? How would we bring that into our body? And how does my body carry that concept of this beautiful process that is unconsciously taking care of me minute by second to assess how safe I am?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm very much with you there. It's this beautiful feedback loop,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
we need it.
As you were talking about that, it reminded me of the practice of orienting, and which I think,
Yes. Mhm.
is a resource that kind of hits a lot of these different types of the different PEMS or resources we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it can start as mental. And for folks who aren't familiar
Yeah.
with orienting, it's the practice of using our five senses to orient to our surroundings,
Yeah.
right? and it sounds, I always say it doesn't sound sexy, but it can be very profound. And I think that can start as a mental process. Okay, can
Yeah.
I name what I see? I see a tree, I see a
Yeah.
rock, I see a flower. And then can I stay with that long enough to feel how might I attune to or relate to what I see around me, or what I notice around me. And so
Yeah.
exactly as you're just saying, a sort of gateway inside by engaging the mind first, and then the physical senses, and then dropping down in.
Yeah, I actually have that's one of the beginning practices in my second book, because it also is so helpful for people who aren't living in their bodies, right? To just start with, what do you see around the room?
Totally.
Because usually people can do that,
Mhm.
and then we can just stay there if that's where we need to stay, because you what you don't really want to do, and I love the way Janina Fisher talks about this so lovingly, like, you really don't want to scare the shit out of people by saying, or shame them by saying, now drop down inside, and what's going on in there. And she's so adamant about that. And well, of course, I mean, her whole modality is around stabilization first. And she, was, I think, Judith Herman's first student. I
Oh, I
think I
didn't.
got that right. Or she was involved anyway in that whole Boston area. She was one of those people. It was an amazing, amazing woman.
Yeah,
Uh,
her work is incredible, and
it is. Yeah.
her book, I feel like I could read and reread, and still just
Yeah.
it's so
She
much
was
just
on, I interviewed her,
beautiful.
for people that want to check out Janina Fisher. Yeah, she's just, well, she's a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is. I joked with her about that. And you're a legend. She said, I'm a legend. Yeah, you are. So I'm looking at our time, and I know you haven't gone through all of but I want to also really make sure, Lisa, how are we doing with questions in the Q&A?
So I don't have any questions in the Q&A right now. Actually, I do.
Okay.
But there was a question that came up in the chat, because if we can look at it
Okay.
at some point, Holly, the Somatic toolkit, it looks like somebody's not able to sign up. And so that's just something that maybe you could follow up with us, and we could
Absolutely.
include in our newsletter.
Yeah.
So early on, you mentioned 3 stages of grief, and somebody was wondering if you could repeat those.
Did we?
Me, or was that Judith Herman's 3 stages of healing?
Well,
I think it was that.
okay.
It was
So
establishing safety, remembering and mourning, and reconnection. This is
thank
Judith
you.
Herman's work in trauma and recovery. Again, another like complete icon in the area. These women were really solid feminist trauma therapists who were my teachers 45 years ago. So they're in their 80s. I mean, well, Steve just turned 80, Porges. I mean, Gabor's 80. Yeah, Gabor's 80 as well, or 81, I think. I mean, yeah, it's wonderful, eh?
It
Yeah.
All
is lots
these
of fun.
wonderful people that, are really still like so intense and productive into their 80s. And I think it speaks well for us, I mean, you're a lot younger than me, but it speaks well for me too. It's like, okay, I gotta keep going here.
We really,
People are
we
like, aren't you retiring? I'm like, listen, I mean, people that I know who are like in their 80s, they're just still popping out books. And yeah,
yeah,
it's very interesting, isn't it? I think it's hopeful that the work that we're doing is feeding us, even though we get tired. Uh, yeah, but it's such good work,
yeah,
to bring, especially when we bring the body into it.
yeah, yeah. I think about that often, that I, in the day to day, sometimes you hear, especially with client work, you hear so many hard things, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
really hard.
it's
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and it's
Yeah.
intense, right? And then I zoom out and I think about all the incredible folks who have really paved the way, and think about, where they might have been at this point in their career that I'm at. And it gives me a lot of hope to see where the field really grows to in the next 50 to 100 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot more conversation now about our own resourcing that there wasn't there 45 years ago. It just wasn't there. Nobody talked about it. We were all burning out.
Yeah.
But then we found each other. But I think it is better now in terms of recognizing that when we do this work, especially when we do it deeply, that we're holding these incredible, I call them hot potatoes. It's like nobody wants to hear this stuff. It's so horrendous what people can do to each other.
Yeah.
And yet, if it's there, we don't go digging for it like we did 40 years ago. That was a mistake. But if it's there, it needs us.
Right. Yeah, well, what you just said, it being horrendous, what people do to each other, but I also think about that internally, right? Like what are different parts of ourselves do?
Yes, internalize.
Yes, and that inner conflict, and even that, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds from like the practitioner lens, but I think that holding space and helping parse out, okay, this is what this part is saying, and then I hear this over here, and everything needs attention, right? Everything needs care.
Yeah, I think you're speaking about what Gendlin would say of really welcome the uncomfortable. Yeah. You got to make space for all of it.
Yeah. And that can be really scary and really hard, which is where, right, it's like we resource so we can go inside, and we stay inside until we need more resource, and we titrate back.
And do you do this? So we would resource different parts of the body that can, so say a resource of a warm kind of billowy, cloudy thing I often get, which is a really beautiful ventral felt sense of a container, a safe container. And then there can be, say, something in the throat that is this uncomfortable constriction or whatever, and that we can go back and forth in these two places in the body, right?
Yep.
One that's making a relationship with the other, and how to help the one that's so uncomfortable to be heard.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really, really beautiful and quite profound when those inner resources rise naturally. I remember in one of my very first focusing sessions, I had this felt sense. This is going to sound strange for maybe folks who aren't familiar with this process. I had this felt sense of like dragon wings at my back. And we think of a dragon as being scary, but in this sense, it was very powerful and sort of could help me see more clearly the ground below, right? And so I remember resourcing into that felt sense of the power and the strength and the clarity at my back as I was being with whatever, tension was inside. And I think, those feeling that arise spontaneously from our system is exactly like that's the gold.
That's the gold. And see, that's why I really connected with you, because I knew you really understood focusing. Because that's that whole felt sense experience. I have one of those that came from a dream. So of course, dreams are very much about the whole felt sense, right? Focusing. They come from the body as unconscious. And in my dream, I'm sitting on top of a double-decker bus in London, which is a city I love. And the same feeling, I can really relate to that, what you're saying there, Holly, of this sense of the safety that comes from being able to see everything. Which is so different than the trauma response of trying to hide from it or dissociate it, right? It's that safety of knowing, as opposed to the hypervigilance of the sympathetic scanning, which is how I grew up. I grew up scanning.
Yeah.
and then having this dream that just came from inside. Like, so often these metaphors come through the felt sense just by allowing the space to open, right?
Yeah.
With a partner who co-regulates. So many ways that Gendlin's work and Steve Porges' work overlaps. And I had a lot of fun telling Steve Porges about Gendlin, and he watched him on a couple of things that Gendlin, and he said to me, I think Gendlin was very polyvagal informed. And I'm like, do you think? Like
Yeah.
that was the crossing for
Yeah.
me of the felt shift that we talk about, right? That whoa, as of course a shift into ventral.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you get that.
I do. And what I'll say is for folks who are maybe thinking, oh, I don't know if I've ever had that kind of inner spontaneous experience, right? Well, that's where the focusing practice and that co-regulatory body
Mm-hmm.
comes into play. And also something sometimes I offer clients as an experiment
Mm-hmm.
is to feel for, again, resource outside the body. So, and start with, can you feel your back in your chair? And can
Yeah.
you feel the support of being held, not having to try, letting the chair do more work, right? Like really, really basic. And if I can feel, okay, yeah, there's a little warmth, I can feel a little bit of ease there that I don't have to really work to hold myself up right now, right? So we can kind of start to help the system realize, oh, there is support here. And
Mm-hmm.
it can kind of help us build that infrastructure if this is all totally new, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And remembering too that this process is a natural process in the body that
Mhm.
Gendlin discovered through listening to people who were doing well in therapy.
Yeah.
So, we lose that process, right? We lose that natural body wisdom through trauma, through the trauma of living in the world now. I mean, forget mom and dad. Like
Yeah.
this is real big challenge.
It's a lot.
Um, so
Um,
when we have that sense of kind of believing in that, right? Believing in that process in the body that knows how to help us to survive at all cost and that will thrive if it feels safe enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge, call it a mental shift, but I think
Mm.
more powerful if we can feel that shift is the shift from, um, yeah, really, how do I put this? Thinking that we have to, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But we were kind of
Oh,
speaking
that
so earlier.
happens.
So many thoughts in there. And then they just all disappear.
One thing,
Yeah, that's
not to
okay.
interrupt, but I am looking at the time, and I know people are getting really antsy to hear the SER.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I don't know if you can have a chance to get that in, and we usually do fit in some Q&A. And someone asked if we'll be going past the hour mark, and we aren't going to be going past that hour mark. And we might be able to have Holly answer some things in the FSPM community or through a blog.
Yeah,
So
it's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I said, I'll share a resource with Jan and Lisa so that can be in the show notes with the whole recap of like even things I haven't mentioned for these different categories of our experience in terms of tools. But
And
as
I did put a link to that worksheet, which I think I found on your website up above.
perfect.
So everybody should see that in the chat.
Yeah. S is for
Okay.
spiritual, and obviously this can be a nuanced one for folks. But just to sort of list some ideas here, pictures of your ancestors, your loved ones, spiritual
Mm.
symbols, reconnecting to your lineage. So even doing sort of research around where do I come from? What are the traditions of my people? Marika does a lot of incredible work around that.
She does, yeah.
Prayer, and again a sticky word for folks if there's like religious trauma and things like that, but I recently have adopted I would call it I guess a secular prayer practice or a
Mm.
non-religious prayer practice, and this can be a really powerful tool as it relates to um, speaking aloud. Like speaking aloud is a somatic tool, right? Whether
Mhm.
that's making a sound or, I think
Talking to yourself.
talking to yourself. I mean, I think
I do it.
talk therapy gets a bad rap in the somatic world, but there's a reason people enjoy it, is because the talking can be resourcing sometimes.
Well,
That's a whole
it
other
relates
conversation.
to coming from the top down again, right? That we
Right.
need to process what's happening down there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, having and prayer often comes from I think a more hope filled and like belief oriented place, and opens us up to possibility, which can invite a shift into ventral vagal.
Yeah, and helps people to create meaning in their lives.
Absolutely.
Hugely important. Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, shifting to E for energetic, our 4 quadrant breakup we practice is actually also an energetic tool, right? We're sort of bringing some attention to the body, but we're also moving energy. We're sort of moving chi or life force, if you will. Uh,
Mhm.
that's one thing. Obviously, things like Reiki or
Mhm.
movement can be a great practice for shifting energy, for energy work. Um, Working with a energy worker as a practitioner, and again, so much crossover here. But even having some sort of altar space where you have your candles or your essential
Mhm.
oils or things like that, right? And then the last letter R is for relational, and it's last, but it's certainly not least. Relational resources are really quite critical as it relates to healing. Again, as Jan was saying, we live in a very masculine dominant, hyper independent culture, but healing does not happen in isolation. And
Well,
um,
that's what we're doing right here, right now,
yeah,
creating community, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and co-regulation, which, as Steve Porges always talks about, that biological imperative
Yeah,
is to connect with others.
absolutely.
And again, that the challenge of that in this culture.
Yeah.
Whew.
Well, and that's what I was going to say next is a lot of times, especially with clients who are really struggling with like uh, perhaps burnout, collapse, and like the isolation that comes as a result of that sort of
Mhm.
state. Relational resources can feel really hard.
Yeah.
And so I say again, bring it back to doability. What feels doable here? Do you have a pet? Do you have a plant that you can relate to? Do you live in a place where you can walk around and even just try to make eye contact with a neighbor, maybe wave, maybe share a smile? Volunteering, right? If that's feels doable. Um, and even putting ourselves in positions to be around people that maybe aren't our friends, but feel safe and friendly enough. So
Yeah, like going shopping.
shopping or
Connect
yes,
with the
having a
cashier.
exactly, a conversation with a barista, things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
The doability piece for these is
Mhm.
really important. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. I can't believe there aren't people waiting. I mean, usually like where come on, let's go back to the group. We got through let's go back to the gallery view because this is our community, right? I want you guys to be able to have a chance to interact here.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions here that have come up in
Yeah,
the chat.
great.
If you
Hello,
want me to,
everybody. Can you say more about burnout? Senna asked. Hello,
Oh,
Senna.
yeah. Where to begin?
Mm.
Before I begin, do you have any specific question or yeah, any detail that would help me kind of narrow in strategies in some of the other categories for burnout? Yes and no. I think, and Jan, please jump in here. I think when I think about burnout, I think about a lot of needs going unmet, just kind of getting stacked on top of each other, right? And maybe perhaps a lot of like the body trying to get our attention to get those needs met, but that we maybe haven't been able to attune to, or maybe it hasn't been safe enough to listen inside, or maybe we don't know how because maybe for various reasons we've been sort of shut off from that communication within, right? So I think about we burn out because we have all these needs that we haven't been able to get met historically. Maybe we don't know how, maybe parts of us don't believe it's possible or that we're worthy enough, right? So there could be many things that kind of lead to that place. And from a nervous system standpoint, again, Jan, feel free to jump in here from a polyvagal perspective, but I think about the sort of like crash that happens if we live up in a mobile state often.
Mm-hmm.
The nervous system is always in flux, right? But if we
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time outside of our window of presence, or outside of that ventral vagal state, what can happen is it's like our system kind of becomes wired for the familiar. And if stress state is familiar, if mobilization is familiar, we're going to live there more often, and then eventually that's not sustainable for the system, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
kind of crash and burn. Jen, before I get to anything else, do you want to jump in?
I think that I remember Steve saying once, Porges, that if we do good work, we don't burn out. And I actually agree with that. I think we can become exhausted, but being exhausted isn't the same as burning out. So for me, in working particularly with that model of working with the nervous system, so we know we're bringing people into this social engagement and working with the felt sense, I don't burn out because the exact opposite is kind of true. It's like it's so exciting to be able to offer people a shift in paradigm away from pathologizing and into this really strength-based model. So that, and then of course, doing it in community like this, where we have our ways of being together and recognizing each other. And the work can be exhausting, but if we're in that place of really recognizing the power of the work that we're doing and what we're giving to people in healing shame, wow,
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and great point, Jan. I think you were thinking of it from like the practitioner burnout lens, and I'm thinking about it from like the client, like my
Yeah,
clients are burnout. So I feel like we're kind of speaking to both ends here.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of tools, this is where, kind of what Jan was getting at earlier is there's a million tools, but there's no tool that's going to heal the vulnerability or the pain of maybe having our needs unmet, or the grief of that. Whether we're talking about like really young attachment inadequacies, or trauma that we haven't fully digested, right? A lot of times we find ourselves in burnout because those things are still living inside and need our attention.
yeah,
And so I think of tools to bring safety and stability to the system, but then the greatest tool we have is the process of slowing down with ourselves to really listen for what's going on in there, what really needs my care and my compassion and my listening. And that, I think, ultimately is like the best tool we have for healing burnout.
yeah, I agree. Yeah. And really being joyous about the paradigm shift.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about when someone feels that they're stuck in dorsal and how you can practice going in when you're in that dorsal state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when we're in dorsal, we are feeling the sort of shutdown. And when I think about that, I think about the sort of like glazed over, numb, a little bit disconnected or even dissociated from our bodies, from what's around us. And whenever I think about being in that place, I think about bringing the most sort of gentle, tender care that we could possibly bring to ourselves, right? A lot of times what happens when we're in that state is we have maybe another part of us that says, you gotta get out of this. You gotta fix yourself. You gotta figure this out. Why are you stuck here? You shouldn't be stuck here, right? And we can understand that as a protective response, right? But really, one of the phrases I come back to often is like, we should start with our no, right? What's the no inside? The no that says, I can't be here. I can't be present. I can't show up to work. I can't slow down and do focusing with Jan, or right? Like, what's that no feel like inside? And what does it want to share? What does that no want you to understand about it? What's so important about that no? What's its intention, right? Because when we start with no, and we start to build this relationship inside with that piece of ourselves, right? A shift occurs, right? Maybe that piece of us would feel more open to being present, or sort of being here, right? Again, thinking about that coming back from dorsal. And so yeah, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds because I know we're coming up on time, but I think about dorsal as like a shutdown, a no from the system. And so we've got to really gently meet that no inside by understanding it's there for a reason, right? It's got a positive intention, even if we have all this other, mental conceptual knowledge about how it might be harming us or keeping us from our goals, or causing harm in the long term. But again, slowing down to understand what kind of care does that no inside need.
I think that's important. And the other thing that can be really valuable is if a person understands that shutdown state and knowing that it is safe enough to wake up the body a bit, is just see if you could go for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
See if you could just change chairs, because that will activate the sympathetic system. And then sometimes before you know it, you're out. You're out of that, and you're mobilizing and you're moving your limbs. And then, you might shift up into flight fight, but you're on that path to be able to reach into some ventral energy. So yeah, there's different avenues in, and I love both of those. They're great.
Yeah. Sometimes, thank you, Jen. We need that, like the practical, the tool there of like, yeah, a little movement.
The physical part that you're talking about in your model. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Holly. This was a great conversation, a very embodied dialogue, which I love. And thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you again next month. So thank you everyone. And special thank you to Holly and to Lisa for looking after the background part of it, the back end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Take good care. And if you want to unmute and say goodbye, that's always really fun. I love that. I learned that from Friendly Circle Berlin. So bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Feels so good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.